Well, hi. Welcome back to this week's episode of Kind of a Bitch. All right, I have a bone to pick. I've been thinking about this topic forever. No, I'm just kidding, but I have been thinking about it for a long time. I am curious. Do you ever feel like society or social media is trying to box you in, trying to personality type you into a label that you then can't seem to get out of? Because I personally do. And recently, it's soft girl era, which is all about drink your water, light a candle, rest, forgive, float through life, um, receive. It's beautiful. But the next is bad bitch season. It's raise your rates and lift heavy, cut people off. Don't worry about responding to text messages. Make money moves in an entire face full of makeup, and don't take any days off. And I'm over here drowning under the two different types, and I'm trying to feel my feelings, but I'm also trying to get shit done. I'm trying to stay soft without being absolutely steamrolled, and I'm also trying to be this powerful version of myself without being punished for being too much or too aggressive. I don't want to pick because some days I do just want to cry and cuddle my dog. And then other days I want to absolutely blast through a to-do list playing, I don't know, Man, I Feel Like a Woman with full on vengeance. And so today's episode is for anyone who feels like you are too sensitive to be taken seriously or too strong to be treated tenderly. Yeah, that's who it's for. So if you've ever watered yourself down to be more likable or puffed yourself up to be more respected, I see you. And I want to talk about why we were never meant to choose between the two. All right, we got it. Soft girl versus bad bitch. What are we even talking about here? I want to break down these archetypes, okay? So, soft girl energy. This came about, honestly, I feel like this came about in the last 5 years or so. Like it's giving COVID era. It started with bread baking. You know what I'm saying? Healing, rest, slowness, intentional femininity, um, embracing receiving joy, not over giving. We're thinking blankets, we're thinking gentle boundaries, romanticized life, being held, softness and femininity as a power. Again, it's about receiving, it's about giving yourself permission to slow down and feel. Stunning. Then we've got bad bitch vibes. And this is kind of the boss babe era, which I think started when I was younger. I think it's kind of closer to 2010, 2015 arena. Like I'm actually curious when Boss Babe came into the picture. Um, it's about assertiveness, independence, extremely high standards of yourself and of others, ambition. We're talking a bold lip, a calendar full of clients, deadlifting, right? Heavy weightlifting and hit classes, um, and bringing in a hefty income. It's about like ownership, claiming your space and your voice and your value. And I think here's the thing: these are not opposite energies. They are both tools. They are both very valid and necessary. And I think when the internet turns them into identities, like pick one of them and then live that way forever, we start feeling like a fraud or like an imposter every time we deviate from that path. I want to talk about the science behind this pressure. And as you can see, I'm lit up about this because as I mentioned, that deviation from the path, I don't know if you've listened to my other episodes, you've heard me talk about when I first got into the real estate scene. I really felt like this job required a specific personality type. And listen, my background, I'm an artist. I am a musical theater girl. I performed on stages for years, hundreds of stages around the world with Broadway tours and cruise ships and, regional productions. That's what I was doing. Living my life, performing, hustling when I wasn't performing, kind of hustling when I was performing, doing all the things. It was a very eclectic existence. And when I transitioned into real estate, I felt like that required a very specific side of me, definitely the boss babe kind, full on boss babe. And I went out and I bought freaking chinos, like the pants. And I would never. That's not my style. I love that I tried it. We really stepped into the role. But let me tell you, like chinos, a blazer, blouses, flat loafery shoes. I felt like I was playing a role all the time. And I remember when I started to lean more into my specific style, but I still find that like my style tends to be kind of more on the professional look, like a classic professional look, even if I wear colors and prints and whatnot. And if I go in a different direction, like wear all black or wear like a sexy outfit or something a little bit more farm girl chic. I always get comments. People are like, "Wow, like this is you like kind of a shock. Like this isn't what you normally wear." There's always these kinds of, and again, listen, if it's a compliment, I will take it. But I notice how I have been put into a box of the way that people perceive me. And so when I step out of that box, I notice the surprise and it makes me go, wait, should I not dress like this? Is this bad? Or should I not explore this aspect of my personality? Is that disappointing to people? I don't know. And so, anyways, let's talk about the psychology behind this pressure. There's a Harvard psychologist. Her name is Dr. Susan David. She was exploring all the things behind emotional agility. She says that the goal is not about being consistently happy or confident, it's about being emotionally agile. So being able to jump between all of the things. One of her quotes here was discomfort is the price of admission to a meaningful life, which I just love. And kind of what she was saying within the context of that piece was more about you can be in your feelings and you can still be powerful. You can inhabit that power by not choosing one specific vibe or feeling or archetype. It's about being able to move to transition through all of them. You can rest without guilt. You can be angry with compassion and love, and you can lead. You can be a leader while still getting tears in your eyes, right? It's all. And so the next one is this double bind. That it's a Stanford Columbia study that was about women in leadership specifically. And it was a 2003 study, which I also would say was at the height of when this really all kind of blew up in my memory. But basically, they gave identical resumes to the participants in the group, like exactly the same. But they changed like the criteria, I mean, on the resume. But one had the name Howard on it, and the other one had the name Heidi. So same qualifications, same experience. But Heidi was rated as less likable and less hireable, even though she was equally competent. And that's the double bind here. If you're confident, you are or confident and competent. If you're both of those things, you are intimidating. If you're warm, you're not a leader. If you are both, you are confusing. People really don't know where to put you. And a few months ago, I gave a presentation for a company here in Seattle, and it was about bold leadership and more about the feminine in leadership. And a lot of these studies come into play, just watching how tricky it is for women to navigate these personalities. I want to be soft enough to be liked, to be a safe space for people, but I need to be bold and assertive enough to get the respect that I need. But it's just a very tricky line because once you fall into one side, you get labeled a certain way, and it's very hard for these women to get out. And I would say with those beliefs, those belief systems that continue to come in, we internalize it. That's why so many women, including myself, we overcorrect. Like perfectionism is running absolutely rampant. We hide our warmth in the workplace, right? People often, especially if you are a woman who leads, you get a lot of people who you go out to a drink with them later and are like, wow, you were really you're like you're really intimidating, but you're actually really nice. And it's like, what? Of course, I have to be this way in the office. Otherwise, it's not going to be perceived the way that I need it to be perceived. And I think that is also where the leadership side, women do tend to dim their leadership skills in relationships. And I know that I feel that way, where it's something that I feel is inherently a part of my personality that maybe really is at the forefront a lot of times, but I often choose to stay quiet or to pull back because if I were to be assertive and domineering about my ability to lead, it would be perceived in a way that I don't necessarily want to be labeled. So again, this is not an energetic war, a vibe war. It is a centuries old script. Another great researcher we have here is Dr. Stephen Porges. He was all about the nervous system, and his particular theory was the polyvagal theory. Polyvagal, I might be pronouncing that incorrectly, but no matter. His thinking was that the nervous system has three major states. So you'll be familiar with these: fight or flight, which is activated and defensive; freeze and shut down, which is disconnection and numbness; and then ventral vagal, which is safety mode. And that's the calm, grounded, connected, but clear. Okay. So, what is really cool about this is that a regulated nervous system does not mean you're always calm. Yes, I'm going to say this again because this is another big deal on the grams, is all about nervous system health and my making sure that your nervous system is always calm and regulated. But what his research says is that a regulated nervous system does not mean you're always calm. It means you can flex. You can advocate, like stand up for yourself. You can push. You can rest. You can feel. And then you can also return to center. So, what I love about this is soft girl vibes and bad bitch energy. They can both live in a safe nervous system. Like one of them is not better for the nervous system. One is connection, one is power, and we need them both. Let's talk a little bit about self-compassion and performance. So this is another Dr. Kristen Neff. Her research shows that self-compassion increases resilience, performance, motivation, and it lowers anxiety. Okay. So being soft with yourself increases that resiliency, that ability to flex. It increases your performance. It really helps to fuel your motivation to continue growing and lowers anxiety. It's again not weak to be gentle with yourself. It is making you stronger. In fact, to have that self compassion. I need to say that to myself over and over and over because I know for me, when things feel a little sticky or out of control, I definitely tend to get more critical of myself about what are the areas that I can control. And that self-compassion really starts to leak out of my psyche. And kind of this feeling like I need to push comes back. And so I love reading research like this, just reminding me that, you know what, being gentle and having that self-compassion for wherever I am at is in fact the thing that helps me grow stronger. So if you too are like resisting rest or resisting softness, or maybe resisting choosing peace when you could when you could choose chaos, don't don't confuse that for strength necessarily. doing all those things, resting, being soft, choosing peace, that is not quitting. It's fuel for the next big rise. Another great researcher, which I am sure you are familiar with, is Carl Jung, and his research was around, I had this label here, modern integrative psychology, but he was the one who created the feminine archetypes, which if you are on the socials, you will have seen this. There are so many personality tests to help you determine this. It's like the warrior, the sage, the sage and the healer might be the same thing, the queen, the nurturer, or the mother, depending on which test you take. But he created all of those kind of those archetypes. And I think what is tricky is you take those and you go, oh my gosh, I'm such a sage. Like I'm such a warrior or a hunter or whatever the different types are. And you embody it. You decide to really take that on. And then the days that you don't adhere to those criteria, it feels like you failed. But Carl Jung, his whole thing was about that wholeness equals integration. So you're not supposed to be just one of these things. It is not about being one specific archetype. It is about the integration of all of them. You are not supposed to be just the nurturer or just the queen. You are the lover plus the warrior. You are the soft girl and the badass bitch. You are both of them, and your ability to mesh the two of them, to integrate them at different times is the real magic. So real power here is being able to access every part of you and choose what's needed based on the moment, not the I don't know, the trend. What I'm trying to say is that choosing one specific path is not the strength in all of this. The real power is being able to access all of these parts, and depending on what is needed in the moment, that flexibility of shifting between who needs to be here, the fierce advocate or the soft compassionate nurturer, that is the power of the feminine. I also want to touch on hormone cycles. I love all of the talk about, I think it's so interesting and fun that we are starting to learn more about how hormones affect women and how much they play a role in our lives. And there's still a lot of work to be done there, if we're honest, but we're trying. But the hormone cycles in all the women's health research, the idea is that we move in cycles. We work in cycles. That's why they call it a cycle. When you have your period, you're not inconsistent. You are cyclical. Within those different seasons, those phases of the cycle, when estrogen rises, you tend to have more confidence, more extroverted tendencies. When progesterone rises, you get a little more reflection, more emotion. But then, the PMS, the 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 PMS side of it, a little less patience, maybe more. I'm going to call it truth telling, perhaps, right? So it's just a reminder that we are moving through these things on a monthly, on a weekly, sometimes on a daily basis for us gals. And biology is on your side. We were not meant to stay in one mode forever. And I need to say that to myself over and over. We were not meant to stay in one mode forever. And I think to expect that of each other is also crazy. It's crazy. I think a lot about, there was an interaction that I had. I was part of like a women's group at one point, and I loved being part of it. I loved the opportunity to be surrounded by so many women from different walks of life, from different who had chosen different paths. There were many people in there who were kind of more on the career driven woman, like I am, kind of more of a metropolitan lifestyle, city dwellers, and people who did or did not have children, and then other folks who had chosen a slightly more rural lifestyle, some homesteading folks, some people who had really embraced motherhood in these very big ways. And it was very cool to have a lot of those interactions. But I did notice on more than one occasion how certain topics enrage uh, would enrage certain women in the group, and their feelings about the right way to be a woman were so intense, that it really it made it a place at times where it almost felt uncomfortable to be the woman that was like, hello, I don't have children, that's not in the cards right now, and I really care about my career. That's kind of my goal. It didn't feel comfortable to show up as that boss bitch energy. But I'm sure there were other instances in that woman's life that really felt like her choice to be a mom, and to for in her specific situation to be a stay-at-home mom, was maybe not respected in its own way. And I find it fascinating that even though I'm talking about society and culture, it is also oftentimes the women who we know and love best who have big opinions about the ways that we show up as a soft girl or as a bad bitch in this era. I suppose my question here is, how do we live both? And I'm going to maybe go through a reframe here. I don't think that we don't need a personality type. We don't need an archetype. We need range. We need range. So my questions for myself: do I need peace or power today? And this could change on the hour. Like, this doesn't even have to be on a daily or weekly basis. Like, what do I actually need right now? And sometimes you got to show up as your baddest bitch self. Sometimes you got to do it. Other times you got to say, that's a big no. I am not meant to go out tonight. I need rest. And that's, do I need peace or do I need power today? The next one, am I hiding behind softness or strength? I know for me, I hide behind strength many a time. And I love that question. And I will definitely be asking myself that. Another one, is this coming from fear or truth? Eh, Good question. Some tools and practices. Okay. I love the idea of adding some of these in as useful tools. All right. So number one here is use soft no's but fierce yeses. It's kind of the idea of like, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. But I like this idea that if it's not a fierce yes, it's a soft no. Like if someone offers you food that you don't like, but they made it, you don't say like, ew, disgusting. You say, thank you so much for the offer. That's not for me. Right? It's something like calm and nice, but it's not a big deal. Boundaries don't have to be brutal. Saying things like, that does not work for me, but I really appreciate you asking. Or I'm not available for that, but here's what I am open to. I've shared that one on another episode as well. The second one is dress the energy. Okay, I do love this. And yes, you might get some weird looks from people who perceive you in a certain way. And I know this from experience, but I do believe that clothes change the way that we feel. So if I'm in a season where I'm like, I got to call on my bad bitch energy, you better believe that I'm going to show up looking freaking fire. Fire. I want you to be like step into that role if you need it. Really embrace your soft side. If you need that soft day, do it. But what if we also try to maybe like mess around with the types for a little bit? Like be a contradiction. You know what I'm saying? Wearing like a blazer, but then also like frilly socks with your flats, things that are kind of juxtaposing each other. A silk dress with a blazer, which I think is really fun, or a silk dress and sneakers. This is actually very high fashion. So, take notes. Combat boots with like a flowy feminine dress. You know what I'm saying? I love that. Number three is let your cycle be a compass. Now, I personally do not follow this method, but I know that for some folks, this has really worked. Really utilizing the time of the month that you're in to inform kind of how you'll approach your days. And I would also say I do think this could fall into the label category. It's like, well, if I'm in my luteal phase, that means I have to do this. No, it doesn't. You might feel differently this time around than you felt last time. Asking yourself and assessing every time you come to it, because there's no point in putting ourselves, in a box if we don't have to. But if we are following it, using higher energy days for action, using like slower and more introverted days for meditation, for inner work, for rest, if you can handle it, maybe the idea of if you're 100% that day is your normal, like 70%, then that's your 100% that day. And that's okay. Again, rest is not weakness. It is simply a strategy, you know? And then lastly is honor your full freaking spectrum. God, I am feeling this so hard right now. I feel like having a few of those weeks where I'm in a little bit of a funk. I'm like, I've lost my sparkle. I'm no longer a bad bitch. No, no, no. It's the full spectrum here. You can cry and still be a credible leader, not incredible, a credible leader. And you can still lead, but like want to come home and have someone hold you or hold space for you or hear you out. You can be both those things. And I would say it's probably healthiest for us to do so. So with that, I have a little closer here for you. I just want to say we don't have to pick a lane. We don't have to choose an aesthetic. We don't have to be easy to label in order to like stand in our full power. I think that we are allowed, and I would honestly say encouraged to be a walking paradox, like soft, but also absolutely freaking savage, like divine, but also super direct. Um, a lullaby and a freaking thunderstorm. Like both things, they can be true. Um, I would say that by embracing all of these pieces, I think we can start to maybe dispel this idea that you got to choose one. But at least for myself, I think the only way to really start to shun the idea of being trapped in that box, of being put in that label, is by constantly allowing ourselves to play between all the different types. And maybe that's what I'll do. I might go in and look at all the different archetypes and look and see how fashion for me personally can change how I'm perceived and treated that day. I don't know. I think it could be fun. So, anyways, if you are like me and you are getting sick and tired of having to choose between being a soft girl or being a bad bitch, and it's honestly exhausting to hear the the criticisms against the two of them because we are meant to be both. So if you are there with me, by all means, please send me a message. If you have found yourself trapped in one particular archetype that you're like, I cannot seem to escape it, I can't seem to get out of this type, please send it my way because I love reading those stories. If you enjoyed this episode, please, please, please leave us a review, send me a DM, share it with someone who it might resonate with, wherever and whenever you are listening. I'm so grateful for your ears or maybe your eyes if you are watching this. And with that, I'll see you next time. Bye.